Hello and welcome to this video, and on this video I'm going to be giving you my review of this year's Glastonbury Festival, which at the time of filming this video happened at the weekend prior. This is Monday morning. Over the weekend I was dipping in to a lot of the performances either on the BBC, and the thing was I was pleasantly surprised by what I saw. This time last year I gave a quite scathing review of Glastonbury, criticising its principles and where it started and where it is now, really pointing out the sort of commercial aspects of Glastonbury. So I think this time I dipped in with a sort of sense of what have we got going on here, and I was pleasantly surprised. Of course, what draws me into looking at these performances is the fact that over the weekend, having so many musicians on my Facebook, everybody's chiming in. They're watching it on the TV and saying, "Oh, have you checked this out and look at this and look at that?" And so I tend to go over and have a look, and the thing is, I'm very aware that not in a million years am I ever going to go to Glastonbury now. I'm far too old. So you're getting the review of somebody who wasn't there, and I'm sure that's a fair criticism, but it is what it is. And in watching it, I had certain thoughts that I would like to put across here, which I'm going to do towards the end of the video. So this is not an authoritative review of Glastonbury, not at all. This is just some old bloke who likes old bands and progressive rock, passing his opinion, and it might be worth absolutely nothing, but that is the way it is. But I would like to get across a certain thought that I don't know whether anyone else would be saying, so I think it's worthwhile doing this video, because I know I'm going to get a little bit of pushback going, well, if you didn't go and you don't want to go and you don't like Glastonbury, why are you reviewing it? So watching, how many performances did I watch over the weekend on the TV? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I watched 13. So I tended to dip into the ones that I thought I may like. I wasn't going for the ones I didn't like, although there's a few bands I watched just because of having a connection to them in some tenuous way, or just to see what was going on. Of all the performances I watched, the one that impressed me the most and absolutely blew me away and I thought was fantastic was by a Nigerian singer called Thames. This was a deep, funky set. Great songs, great playing, full band. Thames looked fantastic as she walked around the stage. Tons of charisma, tons of authority and confidence in front of such a big audience. I thought Thames was absolutely fantastic, and she is an artist that was not mentioned by anybody on my Facebook. I tended to be drawn more to the funkier end of what was going on, including some of the rap. There was a lot of rap going on. This year there wasn't as much rock at all. And the idea of this sort of hippie psychedelic thing that Glastonbury sells itself on, that was non-existent now. It is completely become almost, without the rock, almost like a sort of really huge open air cabaret. Very interesting as different artists come on and try and blow the audience away, not necessarily with the music, but more with their performance and the visual style. This was really apparent in another artist that I thought was pretty good, which was the rapper Little Simz. I thought she was really great, and rapping in a style that I can appreciate, not all this awful sort of stuff that we see coming out of the States at the moment, hypersexualized, championing all sorts of dodgy moral values. This was a serious rapper up on stage, really performing well with a great stage show. But the difference between Little Simz and Thames is that Little Simz was rapping over a backing track. And if you'd have, she may as well have just added in the rap to the backing track and put the album on, streamed it off iTunes and walked around the stage miming to it. And that's how I feel when I watch this. The artists that were miming to backing tracks it just looks so strange, and I will come onto this later on. As I described in a recent video many years ago, I had a very tenuous, I've used that word twice now, that's obviously the word of this video, isn't it? Tenuous. I had a very tenuous link with the UK rap artists, the Streets. When the Streets were first forming, I was pulled into work with some of the guys that were in the original Streets, and so I have an association with the Streets in that I have watched them right from the beginning. I feel that Mike Skinner invented British rap and British hip hop pretty much, or made a definitive statement in that style, which has informed, you know, UK rap since then. I think the guy's a super talented person, and I feel that being British, he has brought an almost progressive rock aspect to rap, with some of his albums being concept albums and very epic in their scope. This is something we see quite a lot in rap nowadays. The best of it has an epic scope to it that feels almost like some of the big progressive rock bands of the 1970s. The Streets had a full band. I don't feel like there was any trickery going on. I thought it was very impressive, and I still feel that even though this guy now must be in his 40s, that it was still pretty cutting, and I felt like he had something to say. At one point he jumped into the audience and walked quite deep into the audience, and there he was rapping to the people of Britain from the audience, and I found that a very powerful thing. A lot of the stuff that I think is successful on this show was not necessarily musical, but was more the feeling that music can give you, which is a sense of community and togetherness. And I think that's what I liked about a lot of these performances. Another performer that performed this year is the incredible Janelle Monáe. Now, I'm a big fan of Janelle Monáe. Again, he is another rhythm and blues artist, really informed almost like Prince, but is able to create albums that are bordering on progressive pop albums. Now, Janelle Monáe seems to have these huge gaps in between her albums, and she's returned this time, and I checked it out, and I was really put up by the sort of hyper-sexualized video that she brought out. And I always respected her for not being like that. I always thought Janelle was an incredible, I think she's one of the greatest performers on the planet at the moment. She is just this like tiny little, she's like a female Prince, this tiny little bundle of charisma and energy. And as soon as she walked out on stage, you felt this. Of course, she had another full band again. She's playing with a full band. Her performance is brilliant. Every movement she makes, every, you know, the way she sells the songs. But before I knew it, there was just a lot of bottom being showed in this thing. And I don't know whether it's my age, but I just think, oh, do we really want to see her bottom? I'm sure there's people who do. I don't particularly. And I find that bit of it all a little bit, oh, I don't know. It seems, she seems to be playing to a certain aspect of music, which I could be critical of. But she is an unrivaled performer, absolutely incredible, and it's heartening to know these people are still around. I did, against my better judgment, look at the Coldplay set, which was sort of the headline gig, really expecting to be, you know, appalled by what I saw. I've often used Coldplay as a touchstone for awfulness, middle of the road housewife music. But I've got to be honest, I really enjoyed their set. The reason why I enjoyed their set, I think, is the overarching thing that I learnt watching this. Again, Coldplay are a great band, right? They've been around for a long time, and they have got a set of actually very, very strong songs. Chris Martin is a fantastic performer. He is up there in front of this huge audience, beaming out, you know, with all his actions, something which really transmits to the audience really strong. You know, to hear all these songs, and songs that everybody knows, to have the audience singing them back, you know, and they all have these like little wristbands and the lights going back. It's quite an incredible thing. At one point, when there's a song called "I Can Fix You" or something like that. I'm not a Coldplay expert, but at one point they brought on Michael J. Fox, who was playing guitar, and he was sat there in a wheelchair. But when you looked at his face, his intention to come out and perform and be a part of this music was absolutely moving, and really had me almost in tears watching it. A very, very powerful thing. So all this is really good. I even checked out the pop star Dua Lipa. Now, I've always been aware that Dua Lipa's actual songs are pretty strong. She's got some good songwriters there. I thought she did a great set. It sounded amazing. It was really in your face, a huge performance, you know. She came out, there's lots of dance routines, lots of running around the stage, but she had a real band with her. And hearing her songs with a real band, and hearing what a real band can do, the way it can support and build songs to climaxes, which I just do not think any amount of programming on computer can do. And I suddenly was hearing Dua Lipa songs in a new light, going, well, these songs are really, really strong. Why aren't we hearing them? Why aren't I hearing this on the radio? A few years ago, I can remember watching one of these talent shows. It was one of these shows where they used to grab some unknown singers and stick them in a house, and they'd all work, and we watch them work, and then they come out and sing their songs. And at one point, they brought in Shania Twain to help. And she watched them performing, and she said, your performance is quite good, but, you know, I would do it more like this. And she picked the mic up and sang, and it was incredible. And I realised that Shania Twain was an absolute monster. So I thought, I'd check on Shania. I bet she's going to blow me away. And she didn't. I thought her set was weak. It was almost like she wasn't there. Started off with her sat playing guitar. She did stand up at a later date. All the songs have been dropped down a few keys, so she seems to be singing right at the bottom of her range, and even then the vocals aren't that strong. She had another singer up on stage with her singing virtually the songs with her, some guy, and her voice was buried very low in the mix. She looks great, but she just doesn't look like Shania Twain to me. I can't recognise her. I couldn't hear her. It's like, where's Shania Twain? You know, now I've heard that she's had a operation on her voice a few years back, and maybe her voice has changed, you know, or maybe I'm being a bit harsh. But what was interesting was the way that Glastonbury has rolled out the legends, but the legends they've rolled out aren't coming from rock music. Last year we had Guns N' Roses coming out and doing their thing. Now a lot of the legends were like pop legends. A good example of this was Cyndi Lauper. Now, Cyndi Lauper is in her 70s. She's incredible. And I've always thought that she was like, sort of like the thinking man's Madonna in the 1980s, with some fantastic songs. She came out, she looked amazing, absolutely incredible for a woman in her 70s, and showed Madonna how you get up on stage and perform, but her voice was not strong at all, and she was rescued by the fact that she's got some incredible sing-along songs like you know, Girls Just Want to Have Fun. But I must admit, watching a 17-year-old lady walking around the stage singing Girls Just Want to Have Fun, I don't know. You see, this is the thing about, you know, the music industry now, is that when you watch something like Glastonbury, they have to bring out the legends to sell. You know, the last 20 years of music has not produced, apart from maybe a Coldplay, an Adele, Ed Sheeran, but it hasn't produced the legends like the Rolling Stones or Paul McCartney or Elton John. It hasn't got that. So they resort to bringing out people like Cyndi Lauper, and Cyndi Lauper's in her 70s. You know, I grew up in an era where I can remember when the Rolling Stones decided to come back out on tour in the early 80s, everyone was horrified that Mick Jagger was trying to walk around, you know, selling rock and roll to the audience in his 40s. That was a real shock. This music has always been the music of youth, but here it's atrophied, and I really get that feeling. I mean, at one point, Dexys Midnight Runners came out, and again, you know, Kevin Rowland is absolute genius. Dexy's Midnight Runners are a band, another band that comes from the area I live. They come from the road around about Wolverhampton. I've played with a lot of musicians that have been associated with Dexy's Midnight Runners. I've known the management. I know the whole story of them. I can remember one of my earliest memories of pop music was a school disco being put on at my school. This is when I was probably about 11. And they were playing all sorts of awful pop music, and I just got into AC/DC and stuff, and we were trying to get the guy on the DJ to play some AC/DC, and he wouldn't, and he relinquished and played some Status Quo, which wasn't quite what we wanted, you know, the four rockers that were at the school at the time. And we went off in a huff, and I can remember us walking down the corridor away from the disco in a huff, and then suddenly Gino came on by Dexy's Midnight Runners, and I don't know why we all looked at each other and we all cheered and ran back in to jump around to Gino. This is the power of pop music. I don't know why we did. No, I wasn't at Dexy's Midnight Run, but again, music can have this communal aspect, can't it, where it can sort of sometimes bridge these divides between people. But watching Dexys now, it was okay. Kevin Rowland has not got the voice. And a lot of these 80s singers, they weren't there because they had that sort of voice. We've got so programmed by, you know, sort of X Factor and Pop Idol, that when you watch Glastonbury now and you look at a lot of the things people are saying about it, they're listening to the singing, and if the singing's not perfect, they're going, oh, this is rubbish. This is rubbish. And I think it's unfair on these 80s singers because they weren't there because they were virtuoso singers. And they probably always sing pretty dodgy, but back in the old days when we went to see these bands, we weren't going there to hear a perfect vocal performance. We were going there to have an experience of the band, which was a bit Larry. You know, now things aren't Larry, they have to be really nailed. And Dexys, I mean, the band sounded great. But the thing is, Kevin Rowland, and I can't have a go. I mean, I'm getting on and getting grey, you know, and I'm looking a bit, you know, grey around the gills, as we would say. But Kevin Rowland walked out, and he looked like the Mummy. You know, in the film The Mummy, when the Mummy comes out and he's still alive. That's what he looked like to me. And he's still got the hat on, and he's still got the big suits. I don't know whether really these old artists out really is anything more than just sort of nostalgic necrophilia. Maybe that's a bit too extreme, but it was a good phrase to say, wasn't it? So the rapper, I watched SZA, as we would say in the UK, is a rapper. They came out, I can't even remember who it was now. I think it's a girl rapper, isn't it? I don't know, I can't even remember her now. I've made some notes here. I thought this was awful. Sounded like it was definitely a woman. Sounded like she was just rapping over a backing track. Lots of dancers on stage running around, but without quite the budgets and talent that Dua Lipa's got. It seemed like a little bit like a school musical. You know, everyone running around and getting their spots, and I don't know, just wasn't convincing. Another artist I thought was fantastic was Brittany Howard. Brittany Howard came on. Don't know anything about her, but it was a really funky set, deep vocal, you know, and she wasn't singing exactly on, but she got the chops to pull it off. You felt the raw emotion that was there in the vocal. And the one I've just watched this morning, the last one I've watched, and then I thought, I'm going to do a video on this, was Jessie Ware, who's a British singer that is really exploring that sort of line of, you know, funk and disco. I thought she was absolutely fantastic, and this was such a convincing take on sort of funky music, disco, all that type of stuff, but coming out of a sort of English approach. She was very charming when she was talking to the audience. A fantastic voice, again, not perfect, but emotionful and fantastic. And I thought her set was great, with lots of dancing, but also a live band. We saw lots of dancing, lots of, you know, sort of stuff coming much more out of sort of musical theatre, I would have said, than rock and roll. You know, I don't think I saw anything that was like guitar, bass and drums of just a guy stood there delivering the goods at all. I'm sure it was there, but I was not drawn to it over the weekend. Now, why did I decide to do this video? The reason is because a lot of these artists, if you take someone like Dua Lipa, I'm never going to listen to Dua Lipa. And what actually motivated me to do this little video was this morning, dropped my kids off at school. I'm driving home and the Radio 2 plays a live track by Dua Lipa on the radio. So this song comes on in amongst all the other awful, banal pop music that we've, you know, grown to hate, and it comes on and it sounds fantastic. And the reason why it sounds fantastic is because she's got a live band. And on this, there's because they're doing a performance, there's a sense of theatrics, there's a sense of selling the song. As the song builds up and gets to climaxes, you feel the drummers are like, you know, they're playing just the right fills, and there's an ebb and flow of tempo as you feel the things sort of lurch up and then come back up and drop down. Right, I feel like Mr. Old and Grumpy when I criticise modern pop music, but in many cases, there are some good songs there. There are some great singers and great performers that have a ton of charisma and know how to sell the song. The thing that's killing music at the moment is the bloody computer. It's quite obvious. All right? Now, it's one of two things this is. It's either I'm an old bloke and I'm used to listen to Led Zeppelin. I just want to hear a live band and all this computer stuff. You know, I don't get. But that's not the case. You've got to understand, 20 years ago, I was working in the UK garage scene. I was a producer, but I was a sort of producer that programmed drum beats and edited samples and loops and did remixes. And I've moved from there very slowly into recording and producing live, you know, stuff. I felt that when the computers first came out, there was a fight with them. You had to load samples into an Akai sampler, you would have a sequencer, and you would drop stuff down onto an old multi-track, you know, recorder, linear recorder. And in doing that, there was always an element of performance. And when it came to vocals, you had two choices. You would either drop the vocal into the Akai sample, which means you could manipulate it, and that's where you get all that 19 thing going on. Or the singer would just start to do takes and the vocal would exist in the same way as it did in the old days. So, and also in the old days, when you were working like this, there was new ground. These sounds are interesting and we never heard them before. You know, 20 years ago, there was an excitement of creating music like that. It had democratized popular music. You could, you know, go into your bedroom with an Akai sampler and a basic 4-track recorder, make a record, send it out on white label to your mates who were DJs, and before you knew it, you had a track being heard by hundreds of thousands of people that weekend in 1 million clubs across the UK, and you could have an underground white label hit, which I did have in around about 2000, 2001. And that was exciting in itself, but the whole thing has been corporatized. That scene became corporatized as things like Ministry of Sound and Cream came in and turned it into a sort of weekend sort of butlins for young people. This is what has happened to the music industry. The whole thing is so corporate and it's been around for a long time. It's atrophied. This computer music idea has atrophied, and we are now at the point where it's because it is so regimented and mathematical and based upon the grid. AI can come in and mimic that very, very easily. Now, I don't want to sound on this video. Sometimes I will come on and be the grumpy old man shouting at clouds, and I do it with my tongue in my cheek. And I know the people who watch this channel go, yeah, come on, Andy, beat them up, you know. But I was actually very impressed. There's still incredibly musical people out there. There's incredibly talented people out there making records. They're there for a reason. There's some incredible rappers that are still heartfelt and can get up on stage and express something to the audience in the term of a spoken word. This is the power of rap when it's best, you know, and be able to communicate something on stage that's poetic with incredible loops and stuff in the background. All that stuff I do love. But we need to return to real playing. And I really believe the reason why everyone's been going, check this out at Glastonbury, is because they're seeing something that's real, right? And if we want to be AI, if we want to have music out there that lasts, we need to put some human beings back in there. We've got to understand that in this day and age, you know, real human beings, real fallible human beings that make mistakes and respond and react, you know, that at one point can be majestic and channeling something from above, but at the next point is fighting to try and find their place in the music. All the stuff that makes music have a feeling, all the stuff that makes music sound like it tells a story, that it has emotional climaxes, that there's a frailty there but a majesty there at the same time. You know, you think of the Beatles when they went in and took over the world back 60 years ago. You know, they did that first album, they walked in and they only had like one day to make it. So they started performing. They basically did their live set with George Martin, just recording what they sounded like. So that album tells a story of that performance. As the guys come in and they're playing concentrated and tight, and then they loosen up. And then at the end of that set, at the end of that session, they go into twist and shout. And at that point, they don't care anymore. They just want to get this album done. And John Lennon's voice is absolutely knackered. He's got a cold, so he's struggling with that. This isn't necessarily him at his best, you know, but it's got to be done. And so he comes on and he sings Twist and Shout, and this becomes the record. That is the record. The record is a recording of John Lennon at that moment, struggling, trying to sing Twist and Shout. The band's loose, there's a lot of energy there. And as he tries to get those high notes, he's missing them and they're cracking. And then that becomes the performance. This is the brilliance of recorded music. And the thing in this day and age is that digital recording has advanced to such a point now that we don't have to make records with samplers and samples and now, you know, garage band or whatever it is that people are making. We don't need to do that. I've got a garage outside, which is my recording studio where I normally film, and I can record full drums, guitar, bass. I can do it all here. Everybody can do this, right? It requires more skill and more effort to do. It requires more study, right? But that's what we should have in our music. There should be an aspect of excellence. And why? Because musicians that can play all the instruments and have an idea of harmony can then express their own personal vision, rather than just dragging cliches off some sample website and pulling them together and then dropping some vocal that's been tuned and twisted, you know, to a point where it has little resemblance to anything remotely as a performed story, right? There are some incredible acts, lots and lots of incredible acts out there. And I think, I mean, you know, wouldn't it be wonderful if the whole world was watching this channel and I had enough power for people to say, Andy's made a really good point, and some artists out there would go, I'm going to take the risk, I'm going to do what Andy says. You know, next time, rather than spending 6 months in the studio trying to, you know, pull a load of samples together to get a record, how about, you know, we write the record, take it to a bunch of really talented musicians, rehearse it down, get it sounding good, go into the studio, and then in a matter of an afternoon, put that track down and play it 10, 15 times until we get the magical performance that tells the story. And how will we know when that happens? Because we'll have a producer with us and he'll be listening to the takes. He'll think, I think you got it there. And then they'll bring a really talented mix engineer in that will be able to pull out, you know, through their mix, not something that's absolutely perfect where everything sounds great and all the frequencies line up, but something that tells a story, something that imparts an emotional feeling, the sound of bang, that happening like that. And then the quietness, the dynamics, right? The excitement of real people reacting at the moment, and you not quite knowing what's going to happen next, right? A little bit like right now, what is going to happen next? I haven't got a clue, and you haven't got a clue. You're watching this and you know that when I sit down to record these, I am just talking and I do not know what I'm going to say next, right? AI cannot do that. The computers cannot do that. If I just stop now, penguin, penguin, penguin. 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 Mr. Penguin. Hello there. How are you, Mr. Penguin? I'm okay. Have you been watching the Glastonbury footage? I have. What do you think? I thought it was very good. I agree with you completely. And what do you think was good about it? Well, I think the thing is, when you see real human beings doing stuff, it's Australian penguin, this is. You know, penguins do only come from the southern hemisphere, so I made the right choice of accent. It wasn't quite there straight away, was it? And I don't think, now I know I'm doing Australian accent, I don't think I do. Yeah, it was really great, really great. And I thought, you know, when you don't know what's about to happen next, it creates a tension, doesn't it? It does, Mr. Penguin, it really does, yeah. And that sense of insanity that exists within the human beings, the ability to actually nail something, but the ability to do something that you don't expect, creates a tension, doesn't it, Mr. Edwards? It does, Mr. Penguin, and I'm glad you're here to add your 2 penneth into it. Now, I think you need to now return to the Antarctic and do your business of looking after your little egg for 15 years or whatever they have to do through the winter, the harsh winter. Oh, it's bloody hard work, you human beings, talking about music all the time, saying how important it is to watch Glastonbury. You ain't got a clue here. There I am, sat on this bloody egg for months on end, and if I do one slip up and it rolls off, you know what happens? That bloody egg freezes. It's only the warmth of my bottom that enables my species to continue. The warmth of your bottom doesn't matter, does it? You could have any temperature of bottom, you know. I know, and the thing is, did you watch Janelle Monáe? I did watch Janelle Monáe, and I saw her bottom on that video. I know. Her bottom must have been cold. So, you know, this is a thing that human beings have, is our ability to have bottoms of all sorts of different temperatures. I know, and that's, you should count yourself lucky, shouldn't you? We do count ourselves lucky, Mr. Penguin. Well, you should. But I must admit, I must now return to my special egg, because I've got my mate, Jeff. He's sitting on it at the moment, so I could come and be involved in your video at the end and turn what was something quite sensible into something that's profoundly ridiculous now. And he's probably making your viewers wonder what the hell is going on in Andy's head, especially as when I'm talking, it's his lips that are moving. That's true, that is. But the thing is that, of course, penguins can't actually talk now. He can't really talk. So I have psychically, you know, my mind has meshed with you. I can do this with all animals. You know, I am like the Dr. Dolittle of YouTubers. I can, you know, speak to any inanimate object and give them life. Now you might say, no, that's you talking. But what Mr. Penguin has said here, I would never have said. You know, us human beings are lucky. We don't have to keep our species going by ensuring our bottoms are warm, do we? We don't. We've got things like Glastonbury, and they're cool things. We can all stand up, you know, and the sense of community, which penguins have all, you know, they don't need Glastonbury, do you? No, we don't. We have to all huddle together, whatever, right? We send the wives off, and they go off, and they have to get the fish, then they have to keep the fish in their stomach and walk about 50, 100 miles and come back, and we're all really pleased. When I see my wife, I go, oh yeah, I'm very excited, you know, and that's my life. We don't have a Glastonbury. You don't, do you? I'm so glad Mr. Penguin came and visited this video. And my point, you're finished now, mate. Right. And that's my point. I didn't expect there to be a penguin in this. You didn't expect there to be a penguin in this. The fact that there was a penguin in it has changed it. And there is some wisdom come out of Mr. Penguin arriving, isn't there? You know, we're very lucky as human beings. We need to realise why we have Glastonbury. why we have all this music, why we have this wonder, is because we have an ability to structure things around us where there's a space for us to enjoy ourselves, and we must remember that. I'm sure those penguins right now, because it's the winter, isn't it? Is this the point where they're sat on their eggs? I don't know anything about it. I watched that film once, The March of the Penguins. But, you know, I think I need to get off this subject now. Do you understand what I'm saying, don't you? You know, we're very lucky as a species. We need to remind ourselves of that. Of the joy of us being able to come together through music. And so as much as I was very scathing to Glastonbury last year, I am now going to give it a big thumbs up and go, let's not be so old and critical. What a wonderful thing to have all those hundreds of thousands of people sat there, you know, in the sun, you know, singing Coldplay songs together. Wonderful thing, I think. I can't believe I'm saying it. And as older ones who are never, ever going to go there now because we'd rather be at home with a cup of tea and a nice slice of cake, but we could still watch on the television through the magic of technology, and I could shed a little tear as Michael J. Fox comes on stage with Coldplay, you know, and to see his will to live, his will to keep going in his eyes, the intensity in those eyes. That was the real thing for me of all this stuff I saw. It's not a musical thing, but it's a thing that music brings to us. Music's a wonderful thing. That is the message of this video, and we should celebrate it all. And these young musicians that I may pour scorn on every now and then, they still carry the torch. They still have the fire that I had when I was their age, and it's a wonderful thing to see. So young people, move away from the computers and don't be afraid to show yourselves in the real world, because people will love you for it. Thank you, Michael J. Fox. Thank you, Coldplay. I'm at the end of the video. Are we done? Oh, this has been an optional extra. You'll notice this is the Thursday. Every now and then I will do optional extra videos. They won't have a lot of editing in them. It'll probably be just talking to camera. And I'm looking to use this slot to try and promote new music that I'm getting sent all the time. And it's really difficult, because if I was to do a video on some new music, it would kill my channel, I'm afraid. I've had a guy who approached me asking to do an interview today and said I think it would be a really interesting interview, and he's doing sort of prog mixed with classical music, very interesting. And I said it's really difficult for me to do, so I'm going to try and do these in the gaps, but it does mean I'm making even more videos, and this takes up a lot of time. So if you do want to support some new music and support my ability to do it, you can support me by becoming a patron, right? And if you become a patron, you can also contact me a lot easily. If you email me and I don't answer, it's not because I'm an ignorant bastard, right? I am, but the reason is, in this context, is because I am just inundated with emails, right? And I'll come to that later, and then I never do, because I'm answering the ones that are more important, like my bank or whatever it is, or something about bills, or the fact that I've got to do something with somebody, I don't know. So, and I'm really trying my best to keep on top of that at the moment. But if you want to get, you know, a closer dialogue, then becoming a patron is a good way of doing that. If you want to try and support me, get to the point where I can push new music. 2 days ago, I did an interesting video, I thought, where I talked about intention and its link to creativity, and was able, within that context, to put across the music of an old student of mine, Dan James Griffin, which I think is fantastic music, by the way, and I think he's a virtuoso musician, and I'm very happy to get him out in front of my audience. But for artists who are watching this and want to come on the channel, I think you need to create a story. I spotted a story in Dan's video when he sent it to me, and I thought, oh, I could do a video on this, because of, you go and watch it, was on out a couple of days ago, and you'll see. Think about what your music's about. Think about the story. Think about who you are and how you fit in the world and what it's about. Stop trying to cover it up with the computers. Stop trying to be perfect, to present yourself as some sort of platonic god. None of us are. Put your frailties on stage. Don't be scared, you know, to do something which is similar to a middle-aged guy talking to a penguin, you know. I may have made a big mistake, and everyone who's watching this video is going, oh my God, they switched off when they saw the penguin. But some of you might get it. Some of you might see that, you know, the thing that enthralls us is human beings, and the fact that human beings are unpredictable. And it doesn't matter how much AI scans what we've all done before, right? Which is all that is, right? It doesn't matter how much it does that. It cannot be unpredictable. That's inherent in AI. I watched a video the other day, and this guy who's on Udemy or whatever it's called, that place where you can just make AI tracks. And he goes, make a track which is a mixture of jazz, rock fusion, and world music. That's all he put in. You know what came up? Something that sounded like weather reports. And the tone of the saxophone sounded like Wayne Shorter, and the bass sounded like Jaco Pastorius. The AI is not going and creating music. It's listening to the genre points that you're putting in and going, oh, world music and jazz, that'll be weather report, you know. Punk and rock music, oh, that would be Green Day. And it's just going and copying those. Those artists aren't getting any money for it. And they're beyond like songwriting and writing chords and lyrics and all that type of stuff. Beyond that, there is something which is much more a thing that belongs to the musicians, and it's their sound. And a musician that's able to create their own personal sound, like a Jaco Pastorius, or like a Wayne Shorter, or even like a Cyndi Lauper or Kevin Rowland, that's their sound. And AI is mining that. We need to move away from the computer. We need to move away from it, right? Not like somebody who's given up smoking or is like trying to be on a diet, not because it's there and it's so easy and it makes life better. Not because of that, because of the artistic realization that that is a dead end and there's nothing there. That's why it's so easy. That is why it's so easy, because there's absolutely nothing there. And because there's nothing there, this stuff will exist, but it will do nothing. It will sit on the internet existing, and nobody will be compelled by it. Nobody's going to come and talk about it unless they're criticizing it. Right, and those are the ideas that came out of me watching Glastonbury. I'm glad to have got those across, and I think I have now. You know, there was a little bit, I've gone a little bit on, but if you want to support me in trying to get this message out there, if you think this is worthwhile, right, now come on. I'll put a top on today that matches my walls. Look, I'm very homogenous today, and that's what people like in today's world, don't they? Homogeneity. I just say whatever comes into my head, you see. That's what I do. But I've done music for 40 years, and I've taught music, and I've studied it. And hopefully there's something there that I can sort of leap on, some sort of knowledge. But a lot of the stuff that comes out of these videos, I haven't got a clue I'm going to say it. And I'm as surprised as you, as the conclusions I've come to at the end of this video. So I'm going to go now. You know, oh yeah, you got to like and subscribe it as well, haven't you? Like it, go on, like it now, go on. All right, I expected this to be like 15 minutes long, and it's like a massive epic, like all my videos are. A massive epic. Because I'm prog. Are you prog? We're all prog, really.